My name is Dewdney. I'm CEO and co-founder of Kuvi.ai. And I just want to do a little bit of an exercise. It's a little interactive. Just by a show of hands, how many people in this room have undertaken any type of financial strategy akin to what Phil was talking about in the previous thing? So it could be as simple as a momentum-based strategy, like I'm going to buy more Bitcoin when Bitcoin goes up, or it could be as sophisticated as like a hedge fund type of strategy. That's like all the time. That's great. So I think that's like about half this room. I think we have a bit of a skewed sample here, but I think I would argue, and I think everyone would probably agree, that about 99.9% of people are not undertaking any sort of strategy in their daily lives over their financial matters. And we ask this kind of simple but provocative question, which is, why do hedge funds, why do FOs, why do relatively rich people only get to take part in either simple to sophisticated strategy? And yeah, that was kind of like the question that we asked ourselves as we were building out Kuvi. In early 2025, we started actually using the term agentic finance. At the time, it was a pretty niche term. We started to think through, what is this convergence of agentic AI and financial instrumentations, our ability to use it to maybe control, coordinate, hopefully grow our wealth over time. What would we call this? And we actually started using this term internally. And at the time, of course, it was almost absurd. And it's incredible to see how fast these things are moving. And now we're at a conference called the Agentic Finance Summit, and I think it's just incredible. And we're surrounded by some big boys like OpenAI and Microsoft and AWS. And I think it's just incredible, again, that we're discussing it as a real category, so everybody should give themselves a pat on the back. Before we get into where I think this is all going, which is a bit of an evolution beyond or a further nuance to agentic finance, which we call programmable strategy, I think it's a good idea to just take a step back. So how is agentic finance possible? How is it even possible that we can be having this conversation? And I really think that it begins with Bitcoin. And I think many in the crowd probably are relatively familiar with this because it's a crypto-friendly crowd. But in essence, with Bitcoin, money became programmable. A few years later, we have Ethereum. Now there's lots of different smart contract architectures, but let's just say Ethereum was, the biggest and best and probably one of the earliest. And now you could model all sorts of financial instrumentation, if-then logic statements with a Turing-complete programming language. And finance became programmable. We have the fruits of that. We have stable coins and DeFi, et cetera, et cetera. And part of this whole thing that's really, really important too, which is a real fundamental shift in your understanding and in your relationship around your assets and your wealth, which is self-custody. And without self-custody, we're intermediated, permissioned, platform-bound. Our assets are under management by people like BlackRock, Charles Schwab, or even by proxy governments issuing fiat currencies. But with self-custody, we're sovereign, we're portable, we're composable, and we're globally permissionless. So self-custody makes programmable strategy potentially truly open. And so my supposition is that this next evolution is that, in fact, agentic finance is this kind of arbiter for strategy itself becoming programmable. And the next abstraction layer is not necessarily assets, it's strategy itself. And I wanted to kind of take a step back as well here by just talking about this conception of like AI solving markets, or we're gonna put some money into a black box agent and it's, Mark Andreessen is giving AI XBT 50K and seeing what happens. I just want to foreground that that's like a mathematically unserious position. If you take, for example, no limit poker, which is a relatively simple system by comparison with markets, it's already too complex to fully solve. So the idea that you can have an agent or throw mass amounts of inference and compute power at something that would solve markets it just doesn't work like that. And this also ties into the myth of omniscient agents as well, like attaching an AI to a wallet and having it outperform humans. So LLMs are not omniscient, they're not deterministic, and they're not persistent strategic systems. Markets are also not static, solvable, or fully scrutable. The scarce resource, therefore, is not execution. Execution becomes abundant. Optimization becomes abundant. Monitoring also becomes abundant. And LLMs operationalize strategy, but they don't originate meetings. So what you're left with in terms of scarce resourcing, in terms of raw material that is scarce, that is relying on human beings, is imagination, judgment, taste, worldview, intent. That's how we come up with ideas for our intents and our strategy. And humans are moving higher up this abstraction stack. So what we build at Kuvi, in terms of our core architecture, so obviously it's not black box agents trading on your behalf. We have programmable financial logic. You can just describe it in natural language. You can say like, hey Kuvi, if the odds on polymarket of the Strait of Hormuz go to 72%, I want you to do XYZ, monitor global production of silver. If it goes down by 20%, I want you to maybe buy some silver. Or you could go, with multiple dependencies, multiple signals, and do something more sophisticated. Persistent daemons we have background processes that are modifiable. They're totally understandable just by anybody. We have composable strategy systems, so you can compose these persistent background processes that are always running or monitoring. The automation is signal triggered, so once that signal is met or the conditions are met, the automation is triggered. We have both CeFi and DeFi execution, and given that everything is becoming tokenized, eventually the executional path can just be anything. And of course, natural language is the way that we do this in terms of the user being able to describe what their strategy is. So our thesis was never that AI replaces strategy. Our thesis was that strategy itself becomes programmable. And we actually believe this is bigger than finance. I super respect the whole agentic commerce and autonomous payments and X402, and many are approaching it through this idea, but we actually think the deeper primitive is programmable strategy. And there are many examples that you could think of where strategy or intent becomes very, very important. Procurement, negotiation, allocation systems, recurring purchases. Say you're not doing so well financially, and you have a recurring purchase for Erewhon, you might want to change that to Costco. And that's an example of strategy or intent in action. Of course, treasury orchestration as well. The next era, if we're drawing some parallels with assets to connectivity and information, Bitcoin, of course, decentralized money. Ethereum made assets and finance programmable. Agentic finance, we think, may make strategy programmable. And similarly, the internet connected information, blockchains connected value, and agentic systems may connect intention itself. And I believe we are far earlier in this transition than we even realize. We thought about agentic finance about a year ago, and now we're starting to think about how will strategy itself become programmable. So thank you very much for your time. And you can find our project here. Cheers. And any questions if you like to. Am I done? Oh, sure. Go ahead. Yeah, please. Sorry, the gentleman behind you, then you. Yeah, so if you have an idea about, for example, some signal, so there's many different types of strategy that we can employ. It could be momentum-based strategy, it could be event-based, it could be allocation-based. And I think that what we want to do, our mission, is we want to open more people's eyes to the fact that they can build strategies that are sophisticated. Right now, no one's really doing strategy. Like the people, like this room's very skewed, but like most people don't, like the extent of their strategy is maybe like some guy who's on the 52nd floor of a downtown office building sending an email on their behalf and asking them if they want risky, a little risky, or no, almost no risk, right? And so our supposition is that, like, in the age of self-custody, you control your own assets, you can start allocating your capital to strategies that either you create or maybe, you know, other people are creating strategies as well. So there's the possibility of a strategy marketplace in the future as well. So we're thinking analogously to like YouTube. Like most people on YouTube aren't YouTube creators, they're consumers of YouTube and of content. So similarly, we don't think that everyone's going to come onto Kuvi and be like awesome strategy creators, but when you increase the sample size of strategy creation from the tens of thousands, which it is today, to say, you know, 0.5 to 1% of just the American population, that's like 3.5 million people. So you're increasing the end size of possible strategy creators, if that makes sense. Sorry for if I'm going over time as well. Yeah, maybe one more and then done. Yep. So we use LLMs are used in a neutral way or an agnostic way. So and we use those as orchestrators or of the way to understand the intent, but also as orchestrators of the function to the intent. So let's take an example of like, hey Kuvi, when Elon Musk tweets about Dogecoin, I want you to buy X amount of Dogecoin and sell it back to stables when it's 10% higher. We end up using LLMs to attach that function to each of those intents. So we have an LLM that's parsing X. We also have that logic itself repeated back to the user when the conditions are met, the guardrails that are in place right now. Anything that's involving value transfer has to be confirmed by the user, but eventually the user may feel comfortable enough to remove those guardrails. Does that answer the question somewhat, or am I close? Okay, all right, cool. Thanks very much.